There's a ton of videos about how to start a business, and that was the video I shot Sunday. But today I'm getting comments, dozens and dozens of comments about how do you actually run it or operate it over time. So today I thought I would shoot a video answering some of those questions. So I'm going to show you exactly what Raji was talking about. There's lots of videos on starting a business, but not enough videos on managing and growing it. For example, the agency model only works if you're able to hire, train, motivate, and retain high quality employees. True. How do you exactly motivate them? How do you retain them once they're at a senior position, could start their own agency or join the competition? What systems do you need to put in place to make sure you're able to identify a top performer and promote them? How do you build a company culture that makes the company last for 1,000 years? That's one of my tropes that I use because I really, really want my company to outlive me. And that's like super important to me. Like the worst thing, I would feel like a failure in business if my company didn't outlive me, because it would mean that my system wasn't better than me as an operator. At what point do you start giving out equity to senior positions? All right. So this is tricky because there's a lot of ways to run a business, but there's only a few ways to start a business. And this is why I think there's so much content around starting a business, because like you start cold calling, you sell before you build it, and you're off to the races. Like almost all billionaires who are self-made sold an idea, like Virgin Air, for example, didn't own anything, just started calling people and saying, "Hey, would you value having your own private plane?" And then he went and networked and cold called like crazy, and then got the planes and then basically subleased them out, and everybody wins. Like that's a very common start a business trope, but or motif, if you will, theme, if you will. And the question of like, when do you give equity to a senior employee? Well, at my Amazon guy, I haven't given equity to anybody, and you don't have to. But you hear a lot of people talk about it, especially in SaaS. And this is usually a retention methodology. The problem with it is like, because I'm such a transparent business owner, I can't do that to my employees. And some of you don't follow this quite yet. I'm going to break it down. But basically, equity is fake. And what happens in these SaaS companies is that they give out a half percentage point of equity when you join, but then they do 2, 3, 4 rounds of funding, and all of a sudden your half point is now 1/10 of a point or 1/20th of a point. And what you thought was going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars ends up being 20K, 30K. And you started with a startup salary making 50% less than what you could have at corporate world, and you actually come out behind. And so those people who have been burned by equity divisions, and by the way, I'm one of them, know better. And so if I were to start giving out equity, I don't think it would attract new talent that's smart, first of all. It would retain talent that doesn't know better. And I have a competitor agency that's recruited over 30 employees from my Amazon guy and is giving those guys equity, like almost all of them, which makes me scratch my head actually, because if you're giving everybody equity, then what's it actually worth? Nothing. It's worth nothing. And this particular competitor, which I'm not going to name, but it won't be hard for you to figure it out if you see the LinkedIn organizations of how many employees are from my Amazon guy. And by the way, there's about 3 or 4 agencies that have 30 plus MAG employees. And if you go look at their model, they are using private equity and are operating at a loss 3 years into their business. So what the hell are they going to even sell with zero EBITDA, giving out equity? I do not know. And neither do those employees. And sometime in the next 1 to 2 years, they will realize that when either one of two things happens. Either the company goes under because they are not profitable and they're not going to get another funding round, because why the hell would anybody fund a non-profitable agency? I was profitable day one. I was doing 70% net margins my first year. And they're probably going to go under. Or two, they do sell, but because the equity has been so, I don't know what the right term is for it, but basically there's so many diluted is the right term, diluted. Their equity is so diluted, it's worth nothing. And it's really scummy. And so I can't do that to my people. So that's why I'm anti give out equity. I would rather just give people their base salaries. Like inflation is crazy. The world is crazy. Let me pay for your bread and milk today. I don't need you to feel enslaved to the idea that you're going to get a payout someday. I'm going to give you the payout as best I can today. Now, I'm not going to claim I'm the highest paying agency, and that's not the point. But I am going to claim I give sizable, livable wages, and I give people the tools they need to succeed. Now, I don't have great retention of employees as compared to other industries. For example, you could talk about any industry, let's say SaaS, they're going to have a higher retention rate because they have engineers, they pay good salaries, they have a culture, they have the ability, maybe even to have some equity plays that they use. But basically, you could name any other industry and they're going to have a higher retention rate as a baseline versus retaining agency talent. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the biggest one is generally burnout. People in agencies burn out all the time. Why? Because the agency model is built around having you service multiple accounts to give maximum value at all times. Whereas in a corporate world, you only give max value 1 out of 10 days. And some people might challenge that, but if you really think about it, like most of the work you do in corporate world is bullshit work, right? You're water cooler talk, you're doing political bullshit, you're going around talking about nothing with everybody, joining the every other Friday frat party after work, and very little work is actually done. And in most companies, there's usually 3 to 5 employees that actually are valuable and hold it all together. And if and these are I don't know what the right term is, but keystone. They're keystone employees. And if they leave, you're totally boned. But by and large, like the average employee leaving a corporate world has almost no impact on the business. Now, in the agency world, you're working nonstop. There is no breathing. It is a marathon at all times. And one of the questions that Raji was asking about in his comment on my last video was about retaining employees. And the key here is to help the employees self-regulate and prevent sprinting. Because in an agency, you must continue running the marathon. There's opportunities to take a break and get a drink, but you have to get back into the race quickly because you can't sprint. You can't sprint to catch up. You'll over inundate and break the system. So it's very important to have the ability to self-regulate a marathon run. But despite all of that, despite offering some of the best training in the world for Amazon agencies, despite having, I believe it's good culture, it's polarizing. So you'll hear polarizing viewpoints from exiting employees on good or bad. That's normal, by the way, and probably a good thing in my opinion, because I'm going to polarize and attract a subset of culture that I like, and I'm going to push away the culture that I don't like. And there's trade-offs to doing this, of course. But if you don't do this, then you don't have a culture, right? Like culture must be polarizing to be effective, and culture is top down. So if I don't live the culture, then nobody else is going to. So once you structurally agree with that, then it's a question of how do you retain employees as long as possible? And quite frankly, the average retention rate in the agency world is about 1.5 to 2 years. Gary Vee, one of the most famous agency owners, is well on record saying that when he first started his agency, every expert ever told him that. And he looked them in the eyes and said, well, at my agency, it's going to be 5 to 10 years. And he talks about culture relentlessly. He talks about how he takes care of his employees and that a lot of his job is, quite frankly, like Wendy Rhodes type counseling. And for those that don't know who Wendy Rhodes is, she's from Billions Therapist. So he's doing therapy work. And I'm pretty good at that, to be honest. I'm very good at holding people accountable. I started a health culture at my Amazon guy, and we've helped dozens and dozens of people lose hundreds, if not thousands of pounds overall. 5 people have cured their diabetes. 3 people have helped with their thyroid issues. I've gotten a couple people to start testosterone replacement therapy, just on and on and on. And this is a culture where I'm taking care of my people, and I don't have to give people money to do that. It's part of like a maintenance package, if you will. It's health therapy in a sense. Now, granted, I do run some health campaigns. I did have like a month where I paid for dental work. I had a month where I paid for a blood drive where, we had blood tests run just to help people get data and do things they wouldn't normally do to get them started. And, people were getting their teeth extracted. People were getting their first blood draws in 5+ years. It was just really, really good and effective. So I am putting money where my mouth is, but at the same time, it's more important that I just show how I'm working on my health. I lost 65 pounds. I started TRT. Here are the things that I'm doing. Here's pictures and videos of me working out, and you can do it too. And then I encourage my other leaders to do it. And my other leaders have improved their lives, stopped smoking, gone hiking, and then they show their videos and pictures, and that culture catches on. So to answer the retention question, you have to take care of your employees, treat them so well they don't want to leave, and you have to invest in them. Now, that sounds like common sense. It almost sounds like a platitude, but the effectiveness of this cannot be understated. Like, I can pay people a livable wage, but they might leave at any point in time to get a 10 or a 15% raise. And if I convince them that their health will be better without me saying this, but by showing this, that their health will be better at my company, they might not take that 10 or 15% raise. Now, we're going to give them raises over time, obviously, but at any given moment, somebody could come to me and say, hey, agency ABC is offering me a 20% raise. And to prevent this as a global problem, it's an isolated problem today, but it could become a global problem at any agency ever, because it's so easy to leave an agency job and join another one. The skills are in demand. It's all remote. I don't give out equipment because I've just had so much challenges and logistics related to employees coming and going. So we hire people that have the equipment from day one, and it's just easier. Now, it's easier to hire them, but it's also easier to lose them. So there's trade-offs, right? So if somebody's relying upon you for equipment, it's much harder for them to leave. Nonetheless, do you really want that equipment back? Is it really going to be in tip-top shape? You're going to pay a couple $100 to ship it from point A to B. Okay, who's going to be in charge of that? Right? I'm running a remote business. I don't want to deal with physical goods, right? Part of the reason I do what I do is because it's easy to operate it. Now, the question then becomes, well, if it's so easy to operate it, why doesn't everybody else do it? And that comes back to the burnout question, because it's relentless. It's relentlessly easy to run, but at the same time, you're on 24/7. Your clients are on you 24/7. They are constantly asking for things, and if you don't add value, they fire you. So your income is tied to delivery and value. Now, I live and thrive in that environment because I like adding value. And I attract other people that also like to add value and feel valuable. Somebody that likes the corporate world where they can duck their head and get by and just be, a friend at the workplace is not going to like working at my company. But the person who's got something to prove, maybe they want to not be a cog in the wheel, they love working at my company because we recognize them immediately. We recognize them with more work. We recognize them with promotions and more money. And they love that most of the time. But there's still a lot of burnout. So I'm going to go back to his question because I've kind of been monologuing here a bit, and I just want to make sure I address some of that. So he asked what motivates people. So motivation is unique to the person, and I talk a lot about this as it relates to the platinum rule. So if the golden rule is treat other people how you like to be treated, the platinum rule is to treat other people how they want to be treated. And each person wants to be treated differently. If I manage 10 people the same way, five of them are not going to like it. So, for example, if I have a high drive person and I tell them what to do, they're not going to like that. They're going to prefer I set a goal and hold them accountable to it. I might be harder on that person. I might be more uh, hostile to them not hitting goal because they didn't want to be told what to do, but I told them the goal. And if they can't hit it, then it's on them. That's like a high drive management 101 training. But if they're a high detail person, they're more brake than gas, if you will, that will make that person quit immediately. The high detail person wants a ton of instruction. They want constant feedback and they do want to be told what to do. And they're not about winning, they're about perfection. They're about delivery. And so for that person, I want to give them lots of feedback. I want to tell them exactly what I want, and I'm going to manage that person totally different. And I'm also going to manage that person with more white glove methodologies because that person has a really hard time taking feedback. And so I might even use allegories to train that person. When that person makes a mistake, I might teach a narrative instead of just say, "Hey, Bob, you messed up." I would say that to the high drive person, but the high detail person, not a chance. That high detail person will cower in fear and will reject feedback so fast because they already have a really high opinion of themselves, but it's rooted in defensiveness. You need defensive people to deliver, and you need offensive people to go out and chase and hunt. You need both at an organization. Now, the question of how much of each is a variable. At an agency, you need more detailed people than you need high drive. Why? Because agencies are all about delivery. So you have to have more delivery than you have hunters. You need hunters on the sales team, you need hunters on the leadership team, but you don't need hunters to deliver. You need a lot of deliverers, gatherers, if you will, in the tribe. So managing those people differently, uh, having plans for them, and telling them what they can expect is very important to motivating people. If they don't get enough feedback, they're going to seek it out and they're going to wonder if they're doing okay. You may think that they have self esteem issues, but in reality, you just haven't given them any feedback in the last 7 days. So I try and instigate fast feedback within the organization to motivate employees. Good, bad, and neutral feedback. Hey, I liked what you did on that email, Bob, but I didn't like how you worded this particular sentence. Here's how I would do that differently. Stephen Pope likes to have lots of spacing in his emails. F is for fun format, and keep it simple so that they can actually read your email versus paragraph form. Those kinds of things make a lot of difference to helping and train your employees. So you have to train employees and teach them everything that you need them to know so they can perform. And there's an old conversation between a CFO and a CEO, and the CFO says, "Well, what if we train all these employees and they go join our competitors?" And the CEO responds and says, "What if we don't and they stay?" And it's really the defense versus offense question here. And I choose to train my employees so well they could go anywhere they want after working at my Amazon guy. It makes the talent here super valuable. It's a selling point to join my company. It's reputation enhancing. Our reputation is so good that a lot of agencies try and poach our people. Now, what those other agencies don't know is that we have a calculation on what to retain, how to retain, who to retain, when to retain. And so chances are a lot of the people that we're losing on the churn to these other agencies weren't as valuable as these other agencies are paying for. So they're going to be overpaying for this talent pool. And I created an intern model that allows me to take somebody with zero experience and get them to superstar status quickly. And I also know what personality profiles and traits will allow me to find this sort of person, put them into an environment where we're training nonstop. So I'm really good at training. So even if I lose all star talent, I have all star talent on the bench waiting nonstop. And that's like an agency model 101. If you have an agency and are not staffing to 110 to 120%, the second you lose 10% of your staff to whatever, maybe 3 brand managers quit on a Friday and they were managing 20, 30 accounts or whatever it was, you're screwed. And so you have to have a lot of talent in waiting because people quit all the time for all kinds of reasons: financial, health, family, you name it. I've seen it all. So retaining employees is really tricky. And I have employees that have been with me 6 years. I want to be clear about that. But I also know what the averages are, and I also know what the percentages and likelihood of retaining talent. We have some really good scientific numbers on and predictive models on who is going to stay and why and for how long, and what interview questions lead us to gather this sort of information, or what history this person has had that leads us to know what's going to happen. Because we can sniff test the people that are just trying to join my Amazon guy for 60 or 90 days to get some cool training and then go about doing their own business. I've seen it. We've had other agencies that some of their founders joined MAG for 60 days, ripped all of our content, SOPs, and training, and then went and started their own agency. And so we know what that looks like. We know why they do that. As talent becomes senior, they will leave in a certain percentage of people will just normally leave. And there's nothing you can do about that. Like, I've leveled up the whole industry for Amazon selling agencies because I'll just give you one example. CTR, click-through rate. Every agency is delivering on click-through rate right now. All of them. Why? Because I proved it was the easiest thing to grow an account. And I even spawned people like John Aspinall, who's now the CTR king, if you will. That was my idea. I chose that topic for him. I went into detail and told him like why to go deep here and why it's so easy. And he loved it. And, he was all over the place for 6 months on LinkedIn. And all of a sudden he found the topic that resonated and he went all in. And then boom, it made his entire genre of what he does. And we were the first on the market at My Amazon Guy to really go in depth about CTR being the fastest way to grow sales on Amazon. And you can find all kinds of CTR videos on my channel, so I don't really need to repeat that message, but the point is the same, that when you create content and when you create really good training, everybody and their dogs is going to copy, duplicate, and mimic it. Now, some of them are cheap versions and knockoffs that can't execute at the same level, but other people can execute at my level. That's just part of the game, which means I have to constantly reinvent, come up with new ideas, and attract more talent and still level up. Now, the selling Amazon pool is actually shrinking in 2026, so it's harder than ever, which means a lot of these other agencies that had profit margins that were sub 10, 15%, they're hurting right now. My profit margin, which was historically 43%, it's closer to 30 right now. It's been tanking quite a bit. Expenses are up, salaries are up, tech costs are up. Companies like Helium 10 has raised their prices another 30% overnight. Now they're doing rate limits on logins, even though it's ridiculous and not in the contract. They just can do whatever they want at this point. Why? Because they're a SaaS company and they plan to sell their company next June. How do I know this? Because it's like clockwork. Every venture capital company tries to sell their current purchase 5 years later. We're at 4.5 years. Helium 10 is about to sell in 6 months. Obvious to me, obvious to anybody paying attention. So, and they started trashing their employees. They broke the affiliate program. Helium 10 used to pay me $6,000 a month. Now they pay me nothing. And then they just did this to me, right? Like, I will never forgive Helium 10 for breaking that partnership, for all the things that we did for them. They really, really stiffed us. They stiffed all the affiliates. And Amazon sellers may or may not care about that. But as business owners, you should, because you can't count on partnerships. And this is something that I've like personally really invested in over time. Like, I really don't like creating partnerships externally. I'm an architect, personality profile. I'm going to build everything in house that I can. And I have found that I'm going to make more money. It's easier for me to manage. People will do what I say. I'm the owner. I'm the CEO. They'll follow protocols. They'll deliver it the correct way. Now, it's challenging because I have to build a base. I have to find the right people. If I create a new division with a new service like direct to consumer, DTC services, it's very difficult to get that online because it requires a subculture within a culture, makes it very difficult. So there's trade-offs, right? So this question of like, how do you run a company? It's a question of trade-offs. It's a question of what culture do you want to run and what are you willing to pay to make that happen? And that pay may not be salary. It might be blood, sweat, and tears. It might be time. It might be a culture question. So motivation helps retention. The senior people, though, require the closest adoption of your culture. So take a guy like Noah Wickham. He is a CEO in waiting at my company, right? Like if I step down, this is the guy I'm going to make CEO. Now, this dude is young. I think he's like 26, 27 years old. I'm 38 for perspective. And I think it's very important to point out that if you find talent worth investing in, spend a lot of time with them. So I spend a lot of time with Noah and other members of my senior team. This is the best way to retain them. Spend most of your time with your best people. What happens in most companies is the opposite. Your problem employees, you're like, I got to train them. I got to give them another chance. I got to write them a PIP. It takes a lot of mental energy to do that. Don't do that. You need to spend most of your time with your best people, especially at the top. You got to cut bad leaders so fast. You got to cut them really quick. It's challenging because it's scary, right? Like you spend a lot of time onboarding great leadership that you thought was really good, and then it just isn't as good as you thought. You have to create a litmus test. You got to figure out what day am I going to know whether this is going to work or not? Because every consultant ever is going to tell you need at least 90 days and you got to give them a chance to do their thing. And if you don't, then it's your fault. I think that's bullshit. I think you could know in the first 2 weeks. And Ken Ju, he's my COO. So he was interim CEO over at Seller Interactive, one of the closest agencies to my Amazon guy in terms of how it was run. They fell off a cliff. They ran out of money. We picked up their interim CEO, made him COO at MAG. Been a great hire for me. And he saw how his company was falling apart. And I said, don't let that happen to MAG. And so I knew within 2 weeks he was a great hire. So I've been able to see what a good hire looks like immediately. And he met all of the cultural baseline tests day one. I didn't need time to think about it. I knew. And so I've empowered him, but I also know he's not my CEO. And so like me being public on my YouTube channel, dictating, my top two leaders right now, I am transparently describing that I don't want my COO to ever be CEO and that I want this young guy to be CEO someday, maybe, right? If I step down, 3 deep to a seat methodology. I've got a backup. I know what I want to do. I even tell my own company he's the next guy in charge if I disappear or whatever, because I want people to know what the plan is. And that's what's going to keep Noah Wickham at my company, right? That's when somebody offers him 2x salary, he's going to stay because I've invested in him. I told him the plan from day one. I honored my side of the pledge, and he continues to get everything I told him he would get. And his career will be super advanced because of that, because he chose to deliver. And Noah is able to execute my vision better than anybody else. Now, there are other people in the company that understand my vision as well as Noah or as well as I do, but only Noah can execute my vision at my level. or at least as close as a 27-year-old can execute my vision at my level with his level of career trajectory. I put him in charge of my sales team. Sales are down at my company. Some might say, well, it might be his fault, or maybe it's my fault. Who knows? There's so many variables, but it's good enough, right? And honestly, when I give him feedback about the sales being down, I tell him just that. I'm like, Noah, dude, I want you to grow sales, but I also know what you're doing is good enough. That doesn't mean you get an A, but you don't get a C either. And so I challenge him. I'm like, dude, go grow my sales. And here's the things that I tried, and here's the things that I would do. Um, and to be honest, he is not trying anything a lot differently than what I was doing. And that's okay because I built a pretty solid sales playbook and I just needed somebody to keep running it. And that was the plan, right? So I go on a hike with Noah Wickham, Francisco Valdez. He's my VP of brand management, also another long tenured employee at MAG and a key leader on the senior team. And we go hike in Colombia, and we're hiking 50 kilometers. Day one, it's raining cats and dogs. It's pretty miserable. Noah gets sick. He is throwing up like every 15 minutes. He has to ride a donkey day 2 or 3. The dude barely makes it to the top of the summit, barely. And and putting a future leader through adversity is fantastic. Now, it's risky because they might burn out and leave you, or they might become a neuron star and just all of a sudden just go blazing hot. And that's what happened to Noah. He goes home, he quits smoking, he gets his health in check. The dude was pretty healthy for a smoker, but now he's running marathons a year and a half later, 2 years later. And so I go on this really long hike. I know the dude's young. He's a director at this time. And Francisco says, this dude's young, man. He's not ready to run your sales team. Francisco said this. I don't know if Noah knows this. He'll probably watch this video. It doesn't matter. And I said to Francisco, that's what everybody said about you too. Now, mind you, Francisco's 45, I think. Hopefully I don't get that wrong. But he's in his 40s, right? He's older than me. And people said about him, he's not ready to be a VP. And I said to those people, maybe not today, but I bet you within 6 months of becoming VP, he'll be ready. And nobody understood that comment internally at MAG. They really didn't. But then when they saw Francisco come online and he's operating where he was supposed to be operating, they're like, okay, I get it now. And the delineation here is interesting because if you hire somebody from external, the pressure is so high for them to perform. But if you promote somebody internal, the pressure is actually less. Why is that? It's because you know how long it's going to take them. You've seen what they've done in the past. And so I was patient and I was able to give Francisco the runway to do what he needed to do to run brand management. The prior era to Francisco at my Amazon guy was very diva-esque. I had let some very talented individuals with some major personalities run my leadership team, or not all of them, but just a portion of the leadership team was a diva. And I never wanted that to happen again. It was really hard to part from that. It cost me a lot of money. When the diva left, the biggest diva left, they started poaching employees. They started poaching talent, clients. They broke their contract. They did all kinds of nefarious shit. And it put a really sour taste in my mouth. And I chose not to do anything about it. Because at the end of the day, I could sue him. I would win. And he just declared bankruptcy and not pay a dime and never collect anything. And I would spend all this time and money trying to claw back something he took from me or whatever. I decided I'd have better ROI just building my company. Now, the real storyline here is not whether to go sue or not sue somebody that's wronged you, right? I think I'll just forgive people. It's just easier. It's what Jesus would do, you know? Uh, and that's one of my superpowers. Like I don't think I'll ever meet anybody who can forgive as well as I do. Right. And it's a weird statement to make, but it's like one of my superpowers. It makes it really easy to sleep at night. I'll tell you that. A lot of people have wronged me in my life, right? It's part of my Alex Hermosi did a video where he said betrayal is now part of his P&L. And I'm like, I get that. Like that comment from Alex Hermosi, if I knew nothing else about Alex Hermosi, that one comment about betrayal being part of the P&L resonated so much with me that I would be a super fan of Alex for the rest of my life. Nobody else had ever said that, not the way he said it in any case that I had heard. And I'm like, I really get that. I have lost millions of dollars from people betraying me. Really, really bad betrayals. But I forgave them and I moved on. Doesn't mean I don't feel like, like the feeling like I don't want that to happen again. Right. And that's really the takeaway. So when I put Francisco in charge of brand management, I made a conscious decision. Francisco was really stable. At the time, I said, Francisco, you're boring. I want you because I'm so tired of divas. Like that's how I I sold it to him, and the dude, to his credit, wasn't offended. Right, like only a boring person, stable, wouldn't be offended by them being called boring. Right now looking back, I wasn't mature enough to understand why I was so attracted to the idea of the about face to go from diva land to boring. But in reality, I was seeking stability. And I'm like, I want stability. I would rather have stability over a really hot shot diva. It's like having the choice between having Allen Iverson on my NBA team versus John Stockton. Right. And maybe this NBA metaphor will go over the heads of some people, but or a Jeff Hornacek, like stable guys that just show up and do their job and are dependable, and you can build a team around them and they're really good, versus the Allen Iversons of the world who are giant asshole divas. And it's my way or the highway. And I read a Reddit thread the other day about how Allen Iverson just went to Australia and he was supposed to meet with 12 cancer kids, and he stiffs them and doesn't meet them at the last minute. Like, what an a-hole. Like, I don't care if you're having a bad day. That's what that's what a security guard came down and said, Allen's having a bad day. He's not going to be able to meet with you guys. They're cancer patients. Like, for heaven's sake, I don't care if you're having a bad day. Go shake their hands. Go, maybe one of them, like you're an all-star NBA player. You go and shake a kid's hand who's got cancer. Maybe that's like what cures him, like he all of a sudden feels good for a split second, and it creates a cellular, molecular level change down in the middle of his body. And all of a sudden his immune system kicks in and beats cancer. Like Allen Iverson could have cured a kid's cancer the other day, but instead we're seeing international headlines about how he stiffed 12 cancer kids. That's a diva, right? He's having a bad day, didn't want to see him. So when I look at retention of my senior leadership, I am relentlessly investing in them. Francisco, now a marathon runner. Noah Wickham, now a marathon runner. Ken Zhu, Stephen Bruning, all these guys now have workout expedience systems in their homes. Stephen Bruning can bike 100 miles. Stephen Bruning was extraordinarily overweight. He's still overweight, but he's made significant progress, dropping, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's 75-ish pounds, give or take. And we're helping all of these people on the leadership team take control of their health, because nobody else will help them. The American healthcare industry frickin' won't. In fact, most of the time it does more damage than it does good. Like this concept of doctors do no harm, gone. And we won't go down that rabbit hole in this video, but some of you know what I'm talking about. All right, so going back to Raj's comment, which just made a great video just by, me reading one comment on one video and riffing on it. So I'm going to reread. So, yes, they're going to join the competition. They're going to start their own agencies. This is part of running an agency. But if you prevent the divas from entering into the top of your leadership, it won't hurt as much. Okay. That's really my word of wisdom on that topic. Systems. We haven't talked a lot about systems to make sure I can identify a top performer. Let's talk a little bit about that. So I did talk about how I went on retreats, and one of the most important things that I try and do is at least 3 times a year, but hopefully 4, is to meet my leaders in person every 90 days. Is the goal. Ends up being closer to 120. My divorce this past year has made it incredibly difficult for me to meet up with some of my leaders. I spent some time in the Philippines. I was able to meet up with Jan Powell a little bit more than some of the other leaders, like Ken's over in Canada, Francisco's in Mexico. We did have a Mexico summit. Francisco and I have been able to meet up, in Mexico and over other countries, and he's visiting the U.S. and there is that. But I haven't seen Ken since I met up with him in Japan 16 months ago. That's not ideal, right? So prior to that, I was doing really good every 90 days. Today, I'm falling short on that. But I am sending Noah Wickham to conferences. He is, trying to fill in my gaps there as VP of sales and marketing. This is the seat that I was holding. I've given him the torch. I still meet with him every day. I give him lots of feedback. I tell him why I would do something the way I do it. I trained him how to do the content. I trained him how every piece of content could be as simple as, what did the customer ask? Read their question, answer it, and give value. Like anybody trying to create content in 2026, if you just answer questions, that's like look at this video. I'm 42 minutes into this video riffing on one comment off a YouTube video that I previously shot. Right now, I'm obviously extraordinarily passionate about this topic, and I can't 42-minute riff on every topic. But the point is that if you invest in your top performers, and you'll know who they are without a system, in my opinion, you'll just know. It's in your gut. You can just see it. Why? Because they're hungry AF, and they come to you and ask for more, and they do really good work, and the clients like them, or your customers like them, your employees like them, and maybe they're rough around the edges and you got to polish them, but they're a diamond in the rough at the very least. And I don't even know what the next level up above from that is, but I'm really good at finding diamonds in the rough. Like, that's just my stick. I call it Moneyball, by the way. Just like the Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill movie, where they take people who are very talented, but need to be played on the roster a very particular way. Some might even say peculiar, where you take a guy who used to be a pitcher or a catcher and you put him on first base because they can't throw the ball anymore, but they can catch and they get on base. That is my favorite thing about running a company, is taking people. And by the way, there are so many Moneyball concepts out there in the world. Ender's Game, another one. For those that have read the book, you understand what I'm talking about. Ender takes this ragtag group of kids who no other team wants, turns them into all-stars, makes them the best team, and beats the competition. And then he goes on to kill and genocide an alien race. But that's a story for another time. And the movie was okay. Harrison Ford doing Harrison Ford gruff voice, trying to be Clint Eastwood. Yeah. I don't necessarily like that Harrison Ford guy trying to be Clint Eastwood at 76 or however old that dude is. But the movie was okay. Didn't do justice on the book, but I freaking loved that book. That was my favorite book as a kid because I felt like Ender all the time. I felt like I was ignored, wasn't invited. I was the last guy cut for the basketball team. I was always running for political office in my school, and I'd be the runner-up every time, seemingly. I probably wasn't, but it felt like that. And I knew I was talented. I knew I could do the job, but I couldn't get across the finish line for whatever reason. Might have been my Asperger's and my inability to understand politics or how to persuade people or whatever. Probably some major deficits there, which are now my advantages because I can do a lot of things as a business owner that many other people can't do. It can be super transparent without squirming. I can be a really good leader and talk about tough issues internally, externally, without missing a beat, right? I can do a lot of things with my Asperger's. And the social construct rules that don't make a lot of sense to me, I can practice those and read 100 books. Sometimes it takes 100 books for me to really understand, like, okay, this social norm makes no sense to me. How do I operate this thing? But I haven't talked a lot about, the notion of autism level 1, a la Asperger's in my business. But I think a lot of you might have guessed that about me by now. If you haven't, you haven't paid attention as much as others, I'll tell you that. But being good at video games and not being good at people skills, but knowing how to run a system to make people operate well, despite not having good people skills, is something I'm incredibly good at. And I can go and find people who are okay at my lack of niceties, right? So I'll call up my employees and I'll go write the business. And then I'll be like, wait a minute, I should probably ask them how their life is going. I should probably ask, how their kids are doing. I have to consciously make that decision, and I almost never lead with it. I have to get the business out of the way first before I could talk about issues outside of that. Or I have to have a moment in my day where I'm not thinking about business, and then I purposely go talk about non-business stuff with my employees. It's not a skill for me, guys. I know it's necessary, but I try and create the culture to solve for that so that I don't have to do that on the daily, right? So this health culture I started at my Amazon guy, which has been super effective, allows me to not have to call up every person every day and ask them if they did their push-ups or lifted weights or took their creatine supplements or whatever, because they're doing it to themselves now. And I was having a conversation with my kids the other day, and I said, all right, who's the best in the world at something? What would you call them? And they say expert. And I'm like, cool, what's higher than expert? And they say master. I'm like, cool, what's higher than master? And they had a really hard time answering that. And finally I said, well, do you really understand something until you teach it? And they think about it for a second and they say, oh, that's interesting. No. And I say, that's because a teacher is the highest level. You have to be able to teach something to master it fully. And so I created this culture where you can't promote without teaching. And I made teaching a core value. Learning is a core value. Teaching is a core value. I probably should put my core values up on screen here. And I really like these core values. They've done really, really good for me. So learning, eagerness. I got a little eager beaver here. Consistent communication with a picture of a bored guy. Why do I do that? Because strategic communication, which is what the genesis of this core value wasn't good enough. What I really was going for was this Borg element of constantly communicating. Frequently convey info with clarity, accuracy, and purpose to all parties. Because what would happen is we would do work on an account for a client and then not tell them about it. And I'd be like, why? And they're like, well, we didn't know that was important. I'm like, how did you not know that was important? Client fires us, told us we didn't do the thing that we actually did. When we show them we did the thing that they actually did, they don't care because we didn't tell them. So I had to figure out how to fix that, and I made that a core value. Tech savvy, this has been a core value from day one at my Amazon guy, has never changed. Being able to type 55 words per minute, Excel guru, Google enthusiast, uses Slack threads. I'll be honest, that last phrase about Slack threads is a little passive aggressive on my part, because we got a lot of boomers that we hire on occasion who cannot use a Slack thread to save their life. By the way, my dad was one of them. I ended up firing my dad. That's a video for another time. I fired him twice. The dude was playing hooky and not showing up to work because he loved weather so much. He was doing part-time meteorology work over in Utah. I love my dad, and he loves weather, but you got to show up to work if you want to work at my company. And I couldn't allow the culture to be influenced by me by me allowing my father to get away with that, because other people would pay attention and see it. And I told my dad he couldn't do it, and he did it anyway. So I fired him on the spot. And he probably needs to be retired, truth be told. But anyway, Slack threads, boomers, you guys need to learn that, please. That's where you reply in a thread for the comment. Why is this important? Because I have 450 employees, and if people don't use Slack threads, holy crap, comms are going to be difficult. Teaching is the last core value. All right, so why did I start manager values over here on the right? Well, what I learned is that the core values were enough to get in my company and stay in my company, but there was just something missing to be a leader in my company. So I figured out I had to have something that was like a step above. You do not have to possess these manager values to be an employee at my company. But if you want to manage employees, you must possess these, and you cannot have a minus on any of them. Multiply yourself. Replace yourself to scale. MAG, 1 + 1 = 3. There is some sexual innuendo on this one, truth be told, because when a mother and a father make a baby, that's 1 + 1 = 3. I used to have this as a leadership concept stated a very different way, and people did not understand what I was going for. So I had to come out and say it in a very interesting way. 1 + 1 = 3. And I do make the sexual innuendo joke internally because I wanted people to remember the mnemonic device that when they teach somebody else and create 3D to a seat, they're creating a multiplicity, right? And by the way, that's a great movie. When Steve clones himself, and then the clones clone themselves, and Steve says, "Hi, my name is Steve. I like pizza." It makes for some great TV, guys. I just got to tell you. It's an interesting thought process, because if you make a clone to do all the things you don't want to do, why wouldn't the clone themselves to do the things they don't want to do? It's interesting. In an agency, though, it's a great thing. You do want people to do that. Soft on the people. This one's self-explanatory. Compete. John Lane, an up-and-coming leader in my company, came up with this one. And it's because I really wanted people to stop using "we're a family" language. I was just like, we're not a family. We're a team. And people just wouldn't understand what we're talking about here. So just like in Moneyball, where Brad Pitt says, "Jonah Hill, I need you to go fire that guy." And Jonah's like, "I've never fired somebody before. How do I fire somebody? I'm super terrified." And Brad says, "Just do it. Rip it off. Don't tell them anything other than you're cut. You've been traded to XYZ team, and HR has the details." And then the other guy says, "That's it." You say, "That's it." Because we're a team. We want, and that's like, you wouldn't do that to your dad. I did it to my dad. I did it to my dad twice. But you wouldn't, most normal people without Asperger's wouldn't do that to their dad. Let's be clear. But you got to crush your competitors to compete. So, and you got to play to win. So we're going to go to the Super Bowl. We're not going to go to the Super Bowl if we don't watch tape, if we don't hold our people accountable with extreme ownership, see some accountability, prioritize, then execute, maintain discipline. And this is coming out of the book from what's his face that wrote Extreme Ownership, Jocko. Chapter 2 in Extreme Ownership, best chapter in the book, in my opinion. He takes the best leader from one team he takes the leader from the best performing team, and he swaps him with the leader of the least performing team. And what ends up happening is the least performing team starts winning neck and neck with the other team. And he's just trying to prove that leadership has that amount of an impact. Seriously. And so that's what comes with extreme ownership, because the piss poor leader would blame his team, and the good leader would just blame themselves. And that's what Jocko talks about in his book. at the end of the day, when whatever military exercise they were running failed, it was his fault. Full stop. And nobody in military would do that before Jocko came along, or at least he made it famous. Finally, we're down to radical candor. I'm not necessarily a Star Trek fan, but I am a Spock fan. Why? Because sometimes I talk like Spock. I'm super direct. I like giving feedback. I tell direct reports where they stand every single day. I talk about the odds. I tell it like it is. And those are all things Spock did with radical candor. There's also a book on radical candor. I don't really like the book, but I like the concept behind the book. I just think the author did a piss poor job of explaining it. But it's a really good manager value. I might rewrite that book someday because, she was doing an okay job until she made it a little too touchy-feely. Let's go with that. I could say a lot more there, but then I might get in trouble. All right, so winding up this video here, you have a lot of ways you can run a business. And you have a lot of choices with trade-offs. And my encouragement to you is to write those down and defend them like core values and do not deviate. And if you do deviate, make sure everybody knows you're deviating and why you're deviating and update the core values to reflect that deviation, right? The only value that's changed in the last year and a half at my Amazon guy was adding compete to manager values. That's how dialed in we are at this point. I'll probably change one value a year at max out of the 10. That's how dialed in they are at this stage. And that's the company culture at MAG. And if you're attracted to that, you're going to want to work at MAG. You're going to go to myamazonguy.com/jobs and you're going to apply. And you're going to want to be a part of that. And if you're not attracted to that, you just saved yourself a bunch of time from ever applying at MAG. And that's exactly what I want. I have 500 people that apply to work for me every week. How many other agencies can claim that? I don't know. But that's our stats. And I posted a screenshot on LinkedIn the other day where those people were coming from. Online jobs, LinkedIn was a big one, Indeed, Facebook. Those are the top 4. So you don't need everybody to love you as a leader to retain them, but you do need them to respect you. Not fear you, but respect you. And by the way, I think a lot of religions get this one wrong when they say you should fear God. That's a mistranslation from Greek. You're supposed to respect God. And you need respect as a leader, because if you want people to row the same direction, they have to know why they're rowing that direction. You got to start with why, another good book. If you want to go from good to great, another good book. You got to build a culture and relentlessly defend it and actually show it with your actions, not just words on a piece of paper where you recite once a quarter at your quarterly meeting with your employees. All right, that's my riff on a YouTube comment, going an hour strong on that one. Now, what I want from you, leave me a comment on a topic that you want me to riff on for an hour, and maybe I might pick it. Watch this video next. It's got a lot of good juices in here. It's the video that you need to watch. My name is Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy.